This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, I have a wonderful guest on here today. It's January the 23rd, 2023, folks. Just getting into the early parts of the year. But I got a guest on today that I have known. Holy cow. It's even been before I started doing the podcast on here, because I started at CHSR in 2005. So it must have been right around there or somewhere handy there that I met this guy, and he's had my back, and he has been a great guy ever since. And I reached out to have him on here today so he can tell me how great I am. No, excuse me. Folks, he has got some interesting stories, and it's lovely to have locals on here every once in a while to help keep me a little grounded. Folks, I give you an awesome friend, Mr. Chris Waddell. How do you do, Chris?
Good. Great to be here, my friend.
Yeah, I like your lighting there behind you. What you got going on? Is the cat doing that?
No, it's I get all kinds of LED lights plugged into my computer, and some of them are like motion activated, and other ones just do their own thing. I'm
Oh,
always
I
like
like that.
I've always
Oh, I
liked
do too.
lighting. I've always been a lighting guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we both got kitty cats.
Yep, yep. Mine's actually sleeping, so there shouldn't be any violence during the interview. So
Oh, mine puts the pussy in pussycat.
yeah, yeah.
I heard that yours does not.
No, she does not. My cat's pretty mean. Pretty. I don't know why she's so mean, but I've always had this idea that she was reincarnated, like she was a guy in her previous life and died and came back as a cat, as a female cat. So is really, really upset that they came back as a cat. So they're just like, I'm gonna make everybody's life hell. So that's that's what she's done. She's not too bad. She's all right.
There you go. There you go. Do you ever have like an oh heavenly dog moment, when you're having a bubble gut bath and the cat goes, woohoo, and jumps in the
No, no, I don't think she'd ever do that. She's not much of a water kitty. So
There you go. Uh, Unless you put a rubber ducky in there.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you know what? It's cool to reconnect with you. I know since you had stepped away from the station, we haven't seen each other a lot, but um, I just rediscovered you a little bit here recently because we always been connected on Facebook, but I noticed you've been doing some videos about quote unquote Uncle Swamp Ass, and I was like, let's see what Chris is up to, What is Uncle Swamp Ass?
Uncle Swamp
I
Ass.
mean, I listened to some of it, but I want to get your take right here.
So I at one point during the summer, I was talking to a friend of mine through text, and it was really hot. I think it was like July or something, and I was
Mm-hmm.
commenting about how hot it was, and she said, "Yeah, it's like not even noon, and I've got swamp ass." And I'd never heard the expression before, so I thought it was pretty
Mm-hmm.
funny. And of course, I mean, swamp ass is pretty self-explanatory. I won't go into the gross details of what it entails, but so later on in September, the 1st of September, I went camping with my brother and his family,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to his stepdaughter, and somehow around that kind of conversation about hot and sweat and all that stuff, and I said, "Oh, you've got swamp ass," and they'd never heard it before. So they started calling me Uncle Swamp Ass. So that's where the Uncle Swamp Ass came in. And then one of the kids made the connection that the acronym is USA, Uncle Swamp Ass. So it's either Uncle Swamp Ass, or they just say USA. So I'm USA.
There you go. There you go. Well, we connected through CHSR. I'm still with the station. I got a message from Aaron not too long ago because where I work at the hospital now, I've missed a little bit of time at the station because I work a lot of overnight, so but which I prefer because then I can schedule my interviews. But she asked if I was still in the land of the living, basically, and I said, "I yeah." She was happy I responded quickly, and I said, "Yeah, I'm one of those living dead people that responds quickly." Yeah, but yeah, I didn't get to their Christmas party. It would have been nice to reconnect with people, but I am sad that we lost Joe Blades, you know.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, because he was there, I think since late 80s or 89 or something like that.
Yeah,
Like between him and Adrian, you know, they've been there the longest, I think, that from my vantage point, other than the guy that comes in there and signs the checks and all that, you know, he's been there since 69, I think. So there you go.
yeah, yeah.
But outside him, it was Adrian and Joe and I'd seen Joe up until his passing, you know, but I was still surprised at his passing
Me
because
too.
yeah, because he looked a lot younger than he was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I know he right into his poetry and did a lot of traveling. Um, I'm not sure what he died of, but
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I know that Joe did a lot of traveling around to different countries and across Canada doing
mhm,
work with student unions and things about student rights and campus rights and all that kind of stuff. He was
mhm.
really, really into that. I wouldn't say he's like a union guy, but yeah, he was definitely well known in the circles across Canada for helping out.
Yep. But I know I got a picture with him somewhere here, you know, and so I'm sad he's gone, you know. He was always a good guy and he was always at the events, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, where is that? Speaking of which, because he would always be at the Barry Awards. Still have this. I actually got a Barry Award.
I never got a Barry Award.
You never did.
No, I never won one.
Why not?
I don't know. Did
Yes,
you?
2016 Critics' Choice Best Spoken Word, Python's Paradise. It was so nice to get this, you know?
Well, I mean, you've done a lot of hard work there, and it's great to have the recognition.
It is nice to have the recognition,
What
you
year was
know?
that? That was 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was at that one. I think I was at that award show.
Yeah. But this was nice to get and so unexpected and but that was my second year of doing my show, like my podcast part of my show, because I was Python's Paradise was in existence before that, you know, about 10 years prior
Right.
in '05. And so when I got doing the interview stuff, it things got more and more interesting, you know, and I did not know that the trajectory was going to take me where I am now, you know, but and it still is weird that I'm talking to people from some of these movies, you know, and even with the station, I remember they were Mark and Aaron, or station manager and program director, were like I remember Aaron going, "How in the world did you get Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter on your show?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's it is very surreal." And now I'm doing the cons and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. Have you ever been to any of those conventions before?
I've been to the LA Comic Con a couple of times, and I've been to a couple of like tattoo conventions, and some horror conventions in Vancouver and stuff. So they're always fun. I
Oh
was just
yeah.
gonna say, like in terms of what you're talking about, not realizing where all this was gonna go. And I know that we've talked about this before and about just how important in the entertainment industry that connections are. And those connections, like each connection just opens a door to another person, another connection. So the more of those you build, and I don't think people kind of realize, like, I think they think, because we live in Fredericton, so far away from Los Angeles and Hollywood and all that stuff, that there's no, like, it's just too big of a wall to get through.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole thing was, like, even when we worked on the X Files, and my buddy and I wanted to do some work for Marilyn Manson and some other artists. The idea in my head was is that everybody who has a business, or just about anybody, has a phone, and everybody has a phone, has a number. And if you can get that number, all you got to do is talk to them, and all you got to do is ask them, and the worst thing that they can say is no, and the
Mm-hmm.
best thing they can say is yes. And then again, so then that opens those doors, to all of those people, opportunities, like everything, right? And I mean, and you're talking about, possibly moving up to Toronto. And I mean, I moved away when I was younger because places like Toronto and Vancouver, Montreal, like the bigger cities,
Mm-hmm.
they have just more of those, chances and opportunities, than we do if you're here, right? Which is why
Yeah.
a lot of bands move away, and actors or actresses and all that. There's you can do only so much at this level, at this part of the world, right?
A lot of people don't even know where New Brunswick, Canada is.
Oh no.
I joked with a few of the guests saying, I bet you the Ultimate Warrior is from New Brunswick because he said he was from parts unknown. And I'm like, yeah, this is parts unknown. But no, it was surreal for me because until I went to Toronto for the first time, I'd never been on a plane or anything like that. All new, actually, if you ever flown Porter Airlines, it's great, you know?
I think I have.
Yeah, love it. But I actually got kind of a rush out of it, you know? And landing in Toronto was like, gee, escalators. I hadn't seen those since the 80s.
Yeah, we don't even have a mall that has an escalator. Like, I always thought that was funny. Like the Regent Mall and the Fredericton Mall are just these flat, you know, one level, and then you go to like Toronto or Vancouver, and there's like, six levels and swimming pools and hockey rinks, and it's just like
Yeah,
we live in such a small little place.
yeah. Yeah, well, I remember stepping off the plane and getting to the upper level because um, I landed in Toronto Island, not Pearson, and so I didn't take the ferry across. I took the tunnel, and when I got to the surface and come out there, it was like I looked at. I mean, we got tall buildings here, but nothing like this, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm not in Kansas anymore."
No, you're
Wow.
not.
Yeah, but I love it, you know, and I went to a couple of cons last year and I've been having fun. I assisted Lisa Langwood at a couple of them and yeah, it's always a blast, you know, and the people you meet and connect with and it's it's a blast. I've done 4 horror-ramas in Toronto. I did uh so far I've done 2 Frightmare in the Falls in Niagara Falls, and I did 1 Toronto Comic Con, you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I haven't had any bad experiences there. Horror
That's
cons I think are the best because those fans they're so dedicated, you know, and I remember that first one I went to, I was wearing a Clockwork Orange t-shirt and this woman dressed as a demented clown comes up to me and she goes, I like your t-shirt. And then she rolls her sleeve up and there's the Clockwork Orange poster tattooed on her arm.
oh, nice.
Yeah, you know, and I've made some friends and connections there and I just fell in love with it up there. I love it, you know, and so many different theaters and so many cool things, you know. Talk about some of your con experiences. Who have you met?
Oh, geez, man, it's been a long time. At the LA Comic Con, the funny story from there was, uh, so we went down a couple of guys from the X Files shop, and we got down there. We met with one of the Fox representatives, and she was really, really excited about this new science fiction movie that they were filming. Um, Aliens, and they were coming to the Earth, and they were going to destroy the Earth, and it was, oh my God, so amazing. And we were like, wow, this sounds great, like aliens decimating the Earth. And it was Independence Day, and she was like, and we got Will Smith as the star, and we were just like, oh, that sucks. And I mean, Independence Days, I think it's an eye candy movie, eye and ear candy.
Uh,
Like,
I'll be frank, I'm not a fan of the movie.
no, I mean, it really, I mean, it's a big B movie. It might as well be Mars Attacks for all that it is.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't mind it. I always like when they say like shoot Will or shoot at Will or something like that, right? I'm like, oh, they're gonna shoot Will. But so that was one thing. Another thing that we saw, which was kind of crazy. At a lot of the comic conventions, you get model kit makers, and some of those guys are, independent, and they do, like, an alien or, some character from a movie. And unfortunately, they're under a copyright violation. So you'd literally see like sheriff guys come in with like garbage bags, and they'd walk up to a table and just like wipe off the whole table and hand them a fine, for having this illegal stuff that was there, which is just crazy. I mean, you wouldn't think that they would go to a comic convention and do that to somebody right there. But so that was, yeah, that was kind of crazy. Um, yeah, I can't really think. We never really met anybody too big at the conventions, really. We were more like just walking around and checking shit out, because we weren't there for the X Files or anything like that. We were just went down as, like paid guests kind of thing. So
Let's talk about the X-Files because I didn't find this out about you until later on, us communicating there at the station, because we've known each other at the station for a long, long time,
yep.
and you got a story there about the X-Files. I saw the two movies. I don't have television, so I just got my set up to watch my Blu-rays. So I I know what the show is, but I haven't watched it. I know who David Duchovny is and Gillian Anderson. I did see the two movies at the theater. So, but I want you to take us into your first. Let's start here. Um, Talk about how you first got the job with X-Files.
So in 1994, or maybe we'll rewind a little bit before that, one of my best friends growing up is a guy from Gary, New Brunswick, called Mike Fields. And if
Hmm.
you into the IMDb on Mike Fields' name, you'll be astounded. The movies and television shows that he's worked on since we worked on the X Files. But Mike was always into horror movies and stuff like that, and I was always into music. And I loved horror movies. I was into that too. But that's what Mike wanted to do as a living. So he went to Florida pre 1994 and went to Joe Blasco's School of Hollywood Effects, and took that makeup effects course, and passed with flying colors. He's an amazing artist, and he couldn't stay in the States and work. He couldn't afford the working visa to do that. So he looked at Canada and where he thought he might want to work. He was a fan of the X Files and knew that they were in Vancouver. And that's about all that he and I both knew, was that they were filming it out west. So in '94, he had come back up from Florida and said, look, I want to go out west to Vancouver. He knew that I spent a lot of time there growing up as a kid. And I know the West Coast pretty good, and I love the West Coast. So he said, hey, you want to come out there with me? So I was like, hell yeah, yeah, I'll move to the West Coast. So we moved there, and my background is in the music industry. So I got a job right away working with a production company in downtown Vancouver, whose venue is called the Plaza of Nations. It's where the Expo 86 site was. And there's a lot of venues that are in this Plaza of Nations. And this company did everything from concerts to conventions to weddings, like everything from small things, small get-togethers to like, thousands and thousands of people. So when Mike got there about a month after I did, he checked into, who was doing the makeup effects for X-Files and what the situation was at that point. And at that point, so Toby Lindola had kind of been handed the X-Files in season one through a friend of his who didn't have time or whatever the story is, that it got handed to Toby. So when Toby started in season one, I mean, season one's budget wasn't particularly huge. They were just starting to turn their wheels. And so he didn't really have a lot of people. It was just Toby that was working at the shop, which was just his shop in Toby's basement. So season two, things started to pick up a little bit more. And then by the end of season two, it was just starting to explode. So with that explosion in popularity and the ratings, obviously the X-Files budget started to increase. And with the budget increase, the more that they wanted to put into creatures and effects and that kind of stuff. So it started to grow on Toby. And while the film industry had been in Vancouver and British Columbia for some time, before that, it wasn't the big explosion until the X-Files really took off. That's when the whole Hollywood North thing really exploded. And at that time, like Blanche McDonald, the Vancouver Film School, they weren't churning out a lot of the kids and young people and, even older people that were taking the courses to fill, the roles that were needed in filming in British Columbia. So Toby didn't have a lot of people. So he eventually hired my buddy Mike Fields around the end of season two, which would put us, end of 94, 95. In 95, I think season three started. And again, like the show had blown up by season three. And Toby had a couple of people that were kind of, they would rotate throughout the shop. They had other things that they were working on, so they weren't dedicated to his shop. But he had hired Mike Fields, Charlie Grant, who's an amazing artist and model kit maker, Roy McGregor, and a chap that we knew from New Zealand, whose nickname is Grubby. We'll just leave it at that. So there was just those people at the shop, and they were quite overwhelmed. So pretty much I had left the job that I was with, and Mike knows that I'm a hard worker. I catch on pretty easy. And Mike had shown me some, rudimentary basic skills in makeup effects after he'd come back from Florida. And it was a chance for me just to learn there as well. So Roy and Mike went to Toby and said, we know you need people. Chris isn't trained in the background of special makeup effects, but he's a quick learner, and he can help the shop out. So I was hired primarily at first to kind of do the maintenance of the shop, keep things clean, kind of like a little bit of grunt work at the beginning. But in doing that, I was learning and working alongside of them. So began to get the skills in body casting, doing face casts and things like that. Silicone molds. What else do we do? Gelatin appliances, which aren't used that much these days. But I began to learn quite a bit. So that's pretty much how I started there, was through Mike and Roy, and given the chance to work on there. So it was amazing. I mean, even in season three, things were starting to blow up. And we were starting to see that. So it was rising in popularity. And I was totally excited to get a chance to work with my best friend and with such talented people on what was, snowballing into a massive, massive show.
I see the kitty getting active behind you.
She
Kitty is getting ready for attack.
Oh, hopefully not. We haven't had any on-screen attacks yet. Maybe if you're lucky, we'll get one.
So what were your influence? Like we were both, I should be noted, you were born 2 months ahead of me, or about a month and a half ahead of me in 1972. So we're both the same age.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we both grew up with the same things. And what were your influence and inspirations growing up that
Ooh,
led you to this? Yeah.
lots of stuff, man. I'm a pretty open-minded individual. I've got long hair and
Hmm.
tattoos, and you would generally look at me and guess this guy listens to heavy metal. I listen to everything. Uh, like we're children of the '70s and the '80s, and I think, uh, I don't know. I always hear people talking about like, oh, the '80s sucked or the '90s sucked or the '70s sucked, but every one of those like decades and the generations. And again, I think we were so lucky to grow up in the era that we did in the '70s and '80s because there was a lot of things being pushed in the entertainment industry, like musically and visually. Special effects, all that stuff, Star Wars, and all of those things were growing when we were growing up. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, some of the influences, like I'm so like it's awesome. Like my dad used to take me to see movies, and in the '80s, I got to see Conan the Barbarian
Love
uh,
it.
in the theater. I got to see James Bond for Your Eyes Only, View to a Kill, Blade Runner. Just so many of those like absolutely amazing movies that maybe a lot of kids our age or at that time didn't get to see because their parents didn't take them to see it, and they didn't get to see those until they came out on VHS or something. So to see those on the big screen, I think definitely has more of an impact on you and your influences, like you're saying, um, by being in a theater as opposed to, I mean, now everybody's got like, 40-inch plus TVs or home theaters and all that. So the medium's kind of changed a bit. But again, I think we're just so lucky to grow up in the '70s and the '80s when so many things were being invented and so many things were happening. And again, all of those things were being, pushed to work on, like the X Files, Chris Carter. It's a Fox television production, and Fox was really had a lot of shows that were pushing the gamut of what you could see on television and in the theater as well. I mean, that affected all of that. Almost after every episode that aired of The X Files, Chris Carter would get a phone call from Standards and Practices in the United States. Now, what Standards and Practices in the US does is kind of monitors what you see and hear when you're watching TV and movies. And so, like, she would call Chris Carter and say, okay, well, the blood is too red, or you can't show dead people with their eyes open. Those kind of things that now, I mean, you look at like Game of Thrones or some of these other shows, and it's like decapitations and heads being split open and brains and guts and all that stuff. And not to toot our own horns, but I mean, it's not us, it was Chris Carter. But because of Married with Children, because of The Simpsons, because of the X Files, and ER and all of those shows that were on in the early '90s, they were all pushing again, the gamut of what we could see and hear on television and the movies. And again, I say we were very lucky to grow up at that time. I mean, there was some kind of heavier censorship. Maybe the mid '80s in music and television. There was the Satanic Panic that happened in the United States. The Not to knock religion here, but some of that had an effect on what was happening at the time, right? For every push, there was a little bit of pushback, but again, you kind of see what happens, and we're left with, I think, kind of almost an unrestrained industry today, as opposed to what it would have been back in the 70s and 80s with the MPAA rating systems coming in, all that kind of stuff.
It's kind of interesting because in 1971, for example, A Clockwork Orange, Straw Dogs, even Dirty Harry, they were banned in various places around the world, you know? And 30 years later, Freddie Got Fingered with Tom Green comes out, which how that didn't get an NC-17, aka the X rating, is beyond me, you know? And not a peep about that, you know? And it just comes to show like how desensitized stuff is. Like I don't understand some of the stuff that they have in theaters that they pass as kids entertainment, you know?
Mm,
Yeah. And I'm not a big one for family films, you know. I don't have kids. I never wanted kids. Don't want kids, you know. I got a cat, that's good enough, you know.
same here. Yep.
You know, I like my adult entertainment, but I think if you're marketing something towards children, there are certain guidelines you gotta have, you know, like of what you can show and what you shouldn't show, and they bleed that really bad. And I'm remembering because the rating system used to be G, PG, R, and then X, and X was mainly for pornography, you know. And I think it was 1984. I mean, they had some problems with Poltergeist 2 years prior, but 1984, you know, with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Gremlins was a big one, you know. That was when the PG-13 bracket came out.
Yep.
But now it's like PG-13 is almost an old R now, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I, I noticed a few years ago something that was happening. I was dating this woman, and she had a few children, and she was talking about the programs that they were watching on TV and how graphic and crazy they were. And so I was kind of like, well, why are you letting them watch these shows? But what was happening that a lot of people didn't realize, and especially a lot of parents, because things are aired on the East Coast first at an earlier hour, through simulcast and stuff. So on, you know, late at night, when you're supposed to have like the Adult Swim, which kids should be in bed and stuff like that, like 9, 10 p.m., with a 4 hour difference, those are on at the late afternoon, early evening on the West Coast. So what kids shouldn't be watching on the East Coast because they're in bed is all being aired on the West Coast because they're still awake. Their parents are at home, and they're all watching Adult Swim, and they're all watching, the crazy, Beavis and Butthead and Family Guy and all that stuff, South Park and all those things, which all of those creators have said over and over and over again since their inceptions. These are not children's television shows. But because of, again, simulcast and when they're on, kids can turn on the TV pretty much anytime now and watch any one of those programs at any time. So the censorship and the protection that they may have wanted to keep kids away from watching shows that they shouldn't really kind of fell apart because of simulcast, in my opinion, kind of thing. And those things have an effect on young minds, as we know from growing up in the 70s and the 80s, right? I mean, we've been influenced by lots of stuff that we saw during that time.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm no censor myself, but I do know my nephew is now in his early 30s, but like I remember how young he was when he saw Jurassic Park, and they say kids love dinosaurs. Yeah, but Jurassic Park's a bit violent, you know? But of course, Jurassic Park was also awesome, certainly better than the shit that came after it, mind you, but but nonetheless, you got to be careful what you show them. But you know what? You watch National Geographic and just see animal life, you're going to see some violent stuff on there, and of
Yeah,
course
yeah,
that's there to educate. But still,
yeah, yeah.
I actually had this conversation not too long ago because I've never heard anybody have it. Speaking of being desensitized, and none of these censor people ever think about this. You go to a toy store and you see stuffed animals of like bears and hippos and stuff like that. And I'm kind of like, this is kind of funny, but you get a kid that will sleep with his teddy bear or whatnot, and I'm like, do they ever stop and think, that bears are dangerous?
Yeah,
Speaking of Speaking of being desensitized, look how animals often get viewed, you know?
yeah, 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 yeah. Kids, I mean, kids could easily believe that, bears are like cuddly, happy animals and wander off and get eaten by a bear.
Yep,
Whoops.
I find it amusing, but you never hear that kind of controversy. Not that I'm against teddy bears or anything like that. Um, I love animals, but it's just I find it funny how many animals, get passed off as, oh, look, it's a cute animal, until you reach out and try to pet it.
Yeah.
Yep, a little different story then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find society weird, and some of the stuff. I'm pretty sure you've been following society as of the last few years. The whole woke thing, was just utter bullshit. What they're doing with Scooby Doo and what they're doing with this and that. And I'm like, just tell a good story. Quit checking off a bunch of, excuse my language, but a bunch of fucking boxes.
Yeah.
You know? Yep. Or when they say, if you don't go see this movie, you're racist or you're homophobic, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go see your movie because you're trying to put me into a box.
Yeah. The studios have really kind of cowed to that whole, like you said, kind of the woke kind of system. Um, and I'm with you. Like let's just make like good movies. No, let's make great movies and TV shows and music without having to worry about, like we come again from that era in the '80s where there was beginning to be a lot of censorship. The Parents Music Resource Center that was headed up by Tipper Gore in the 1980s. You had musicians and actors and actresses going to Congress and talking about why they shouldn't censor this material. Um, so we kind of grew up in a bit of that political correct time, but at that time, if you don't like something, don't
Hmm.
watch it. If you don't like to listen to something, change the channel or turn it off. But today's society, you've got to take up your arms against every little thing that you think is wrong and make some big deal about it and thrust your nose and everybody else's nose into it when most of us just want to be entertained.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, talk about let's go back to the X-Files here, and um, I didn't know you then. But talk about being on set or creating with the X Files. Talk about that experience. Anything that stands out to you?
Oh my goodness, everything stands out for that. It's such an amazing process in film, TV, and I think even more than music, like especially TV, because you get to see, and not only you, but everybody gets to see what you've done And the turnaround for that, like, it was crazy. Like, I know friends that are in the TV and film industry today, and I mean, an episode was basically being filmed within a week, like 1 week. I mean, some of that stuff ended up, you'd have a second unit that would be, finishing up an episode while you're starting the next episode. So that's the crazy part about what we were doing. So the shop that I worked for, Linda Makeup Effects, um, Toby had the contract for the X-Files specifically. And then when Chris Carter's second series, Millennium, started up, we also did that too. There were a few special effects shop in the city. There weren't that many. So every once in a while, we might get some piecemeal work for Sliders, Poltergeist, The Legacy, Outer Limits, and other shows that were Viper was another one. So we get piecemeal work that was with that. So 5 or 6 guys and sometimes a couple of girls working on an episode of X-Files. And then you're getting ready for the next episode of X-Files. You've also got people finishing up filming that episode on X-Files. And then you might have stuff for other TV shows. So we didn't have a lot of people, and we had a lot of stuff to do. We managed to get it done. It was a lot of hours. Sometimes we worked 7 days a week. We missed a lot of holidays. And for some people that's hard. My buddies and I, none of us are married or had kids or anything like that. So,
Yay!
yeah, we were young, making money, working on the X-Files, and I mean, we loved what we were doing. So, unless you really, really got beat, you barely ever even thought about going home because you were just thinking about, damn, this is cool what I'm doing, kind of thing. Some things that stood out. I mean, I got to play an alien on one of the episodes, which, I mean, yeah, they didn't even have to. I mean, they did pay me, but I mean, I would have done that for free. Toby came one day. So in the 3rd season, episode 20, there's a pretty humorous episode called Jose Chung from Outer Space. Some places it's called Jose Chung versus the Aliens. And production came to the shop and asked Toby if he had 3 skinny guys who could be these aliens. And Doug Morrow, who was working at the shop, Mike Fields, and I were all pretty much about the same height. We're all pretty much about the same, like, skinny body size at that time. I'm a little bit of a gut now in my 50s.
Oh,
But
come on. Come on.
but at that time in our lives, we all weighed like about 110 pounds soaking wet. So yeah, when he asked if we wanted to be aliens on this episode, holy crap, yes, please, absolutely. And that was an amazing experience. I mean, we always loved, a lot of people talk about being on set is so boring, because yeah, it takes a lot of time to do things, and your scene might be pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And so you wait and wait and wait. But we loved it because we were watching everything that was going on. And it was just, it's movie magic. I mean, watching all of this stuff, how it comes together, and just kind of like how, everything is kind of exploded when you're filming, and then the editing and the, all that process that brings it in, that gives you a cohesive television program. That, again, the most satisfying thing at the end of the week was to see this episode that you just spent all of this time working on these pieces, and to see that on TV and to see your work was really, really gratifying. Sometimes it was a little frustrating. An example of that is for an episode of Millennium. I couldn't even tell you which episode it was, but there's a scene where they're chasing somebody through a butcher shop, and in the back freezer there's all these hanging sides of beef on meat hooks. And production was told that if any crew or actors or whatever hit these sides of beef with their clothing or arms or whatever, that it would be considered tainted and not able to sell it to market. So production would have to buy anything that we bumped into. So they decided, well, okay, we'll just get the guys to replicate sides of beef. So we got this massive, I mean, a side of beef it's the side of a freaking cow, man, from head to tail. So we get this frozen thing in. We have to make a mold out of that. We did a silicone mold with a fiberglass outer shell. Um, while that process is happening, the meat is thawing and it's not refrigerated and it's got, chemicals that are interacting with it. So by the end of it, it smells like rotting death. So we have to pull that out of the mold. And then we had for 2 weeks, Greg, 12-hour shifts, split in two, 24 hours a day, busting out 23 sides of beef for this episode. And when they filmed that episode and we watched it back, you see about 4 seconds of all of that work. And that's all it was just 4 seconds of boom, 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 and that was it. And 2 weeks of 24-hour shifts back to back to make these things. So you're kind of wondering, like, how much did they pay, like, all of us to do this and for the materials for all this stuff against just buying those sides of beef that we might run into, kind of thing. So those are crazy things. Like I used to do on X-Files and Millennium, there was episodes where people were immolated or burned to death. They caught on fire, spontaneous combustion or whatever. So one of my jobs was burning bodies. And because they're playing a character that's on the show, whatever they're wearing for wardrobe, if it's like some Versace suit or something like that, we're getting that. Like the price tags are still on this stuff. And this is like top of the line clothing. And I'm taking a torch to it and burning it all. And it's just like, again, you're thinking like, this is crazy. Like, why can't, you're not going to be able to tell what this was he was wearing. Why not use just crap clothing? Let me burn it and it'd be cheaper. But
Yep.
that's not the way the industry works.
Wow. Wow. They have no sense of the price tags.
Hey, they got, almost like an unlimited budget at that point, right? So whatever.
There you go. There you go. So, did you ever, you probably get this question a lot, but I'm going to ask it. Do you ever meet David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson?
I never met Jillian directly. I was around her a lot on set.
Mm-hmm.
But when I played the alien, when we played the aliens, these alien heads that we had on, they had like plastic eyes, and so
Mm-hmm.
when we were breathing, they fogged up, so you couldn't see anything, except for they had like nose holes, so I could see this little tiny crack. I could look through my nose and kind of see, oh, okay, that's who I'm looking at, kind of thing. And one of the days on set, and this was also like you were essentially blind. So you'd be standing there and somebody would grab your arm and you'd get dragged over to wherever, and somebody would say flashing, and all of a sudden this camera's going off and they're taking pictures of you. And most of the time I didn't even know who the heck I was standing with. But one of the pictures, and I'd love to find it. I mean, Jillian must have it or somebody must have it. But there was a picture of me taken with Piper, her daughter, who was maybe 1 or 2 years old at that time. David, we worked around a bit more. He was great. He's a little bit demented. Uh, which also kind of came into his character as well. His character was known for sitting back and watching porn late at night. But he was a great guy. And everybody that we worked with, all the stars from Lance Henriksen,
Ah,
Nicholas Leah, all of them were always very appreciative of the work that we did, if not grossed out sometimes. Lance Henriksen was always great because, of course, Lance comes from a horror background. He's done a lot of horror movies and sci-fi flicks. So he's worked around the special effects medium quite a bit. So he's got an eye. So anytime that he came over and said something about what we were working on, that was always awesome. And yeah, Lance was always really great and cool to talk to.
I've heard good things about Lance. I've never met him, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic guy.
I
Fantastic.
mean, that gets you into James Cameron territory with him because he was in Aliens and The Terminator and wow.
I never realized that I'm a huge Close Encounters fan, but I never realized that he plays like this. And if you're watching kind of like the TV or the theatrical release, a lot of his scenes are cut out. But if you're watching director's cut, you'll see Lance plays this basically the helper to oh, what was his Lacombe, I think was the French ufologist guy. He's basically like his runaround guy and security agent for Lacombe. But I was like, holy crap, that's Lance Henderson. Like, he's like, what hasn't he been in? Kind of thing.
Like seeing Nicolas Cage in Fast Times at Ridgemont High in the
Yeah,
background flipping burgers,
yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, you and I grew up in that era. Like we grew up, like I had an uncle that owned a video store from
oh wow.
1981 till 1988,
Oh wow.
and we grew up with that. How things have changed, You know, it's funny because when I was in Toronto last, I did a video where I addressed today's generations because I hear people say, you know, things were so much better in the 70s. Things were so much better in the 80s. And we've got a lot of stuff in the 70s and 80s. I can tell you, we're great. I think movies were better. I think music was better. But they take for granted stuff today. Like, I'll give you an example. I went to Frightmare in the Falls last October, at the end of October, and I left the venue at night when it closed up, and I went to find my hotel, and I put on my phone, steps, how far away from it. It just occurred to me that I went from 6 minutes to 8 minutes to 10 minutes, and I'm like, why in the fuck am I getting so far away? And get to the point where I had to ask somebody where my hotel was. Turns out it was about a 2-minute walk from the venue.
Oh
I
jeez.
didn't I didn't even realize that. When daylight hit the next day, I was like, shit, what was I doing? But back in the 70s and 80s, I would have panicked because I would have felt lost. Now I'm just annoyed because my phone is screwing with me. But I did a video where I was talking about, you know, back in our day, and I'll use those words, our day, we had typewriters, not computers. Well, computers were coming in,
Yeah,
but we
yeah,
mainly did stuff on typewriters. And with computers, it's easy we don't have to use whiteout anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Um, we got phones. You just stick right here, I can have my headphones in it. It's
yeah.
like a little pocket computer you can call people on, you can look stuff up on, and you can carry it with you. You know what a cell phone was back in the 70s and 80s? It was at the side of the road that you had to hop into and put change into.
Exactly.
you know, um, a lot of people don't realize. Of course, I feel bad for kids that are born today, because how the world's going right now. Things are going completely out of whack. Um, but I won't get into that. But I think between you and me, I think we were born at just the right time, the early 70s, or late 60s or whatever, we were born at just that right time because I'm not saying there aren't smart people in the millennials right now, but that's certainly not what the focus is on in the media. It's always on
Yeah,
people doing stupid shit, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Like I remember back in hey, Kitty, come on, say hello to. Here we go. Here's my kitty. This is Skittles.
Oh, nice. What a
This
cute
is
kitty.
this is my alien.
How
Hi,
old
kitty.
is how old Skittles?
Oh, he's about 15 in our years.
Oh wow,
He still gets around. He was my parents' cat, and now he's my kitty.
nice.
Kitty says, "You're exploiting me. You're exploiting me for hits. You're exploiting me for hits. You lazy kitty." He's lazy. You know
I was
why
gonna.
I have to work a lot? Because Skittles calls in sick. Or no, calls in lazy. He calls in lazy. Other people call him sick. He calls in lazy.
I was lazy.
Hmm.
I was gonna say, a lot of my buddies kind of razz me because I still buy movies, like I still buy DVDs or Blu-rays and
I
stuff.
still do.
And I just kind of chalk it up to, excuse me here. I just kind of chalk it up to again, the time that we come from. You know, vinyl records, uh we could physically hold these things in our hand.
Hmm.
And there was something about, I mean, even a DVD box, like the artwork, and whatever's inside. There's just something to having that physical, and maybe that's the silliness about us folk from the 70s and 80s is our reluctance to let go of these physical things. But I always say to my buddies, I'm like, well, if something happens and Netflix and all these streaming things go dead, what are you going to watch? What? And so I love having these because it's got behind the scenes stuff and all of those things, which sure you can find on the internet. But when you watch a movie on Netflix, you can't watch the making of Alien after or before you watched it, kind of thing, right? Where if you have the DVD, you got all that stuff. I'm
Yep.
a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I was over at Tim Raines a couple of weeks ago,
Hmm.
and Tim is notorious and always good for every time that I'm there. He'll find something. So Digital World had the extended Lord of the Rings box set, which I think runs, $90 to $100 these days for $19. And I mean, that's got like 9 hours of behind the scenes footage I mean, aside from the movies. And I just love that stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna still buy these if I can get them physical aspects of the medium that I'm enjoying because I like to have those. And and
Yep.
and I mean, and I don't know. I mean, in terms of pollution and all that kind of stuff, maybe not having all of these physical objects in our homes. I mean, what's going to happen to all this stuff when I kick the bucket? It's going to end up in someone else's home or sold, or that kind of thing. Whereas if you don't have any of those things, if your digital library is all you have, your digital music library is all you have, when you kick the bucket, you won't have a whole bunch of shit that you have to worry about, who it's going to go to or what's going to happen to it or anything like that. I don't know. Again, we're from a different generation, and yeah, I think it's a little. I think it's very hard for kids today to understand our attachment to these
Hmm.
things, but they didn't grow. Again, they didn't grow up. I mean, we didn't grow up with video, like with consoles and our TVs this far from our faces, like most kids are today. We had the time to go out and actually play and go out and do physical things and sports and all that kind of stuff. Where nowadays it's not much of a drive to get kids to do those things.
Dope. Exactly. Yeah. It's weird how things have changed like that, and but again, they take a lot for granted because, like I said, if you're sitting in a waiting room, waiting for a long time, it's nice to have your phone there where you can watch something, and
Yep.
so, so when I hear people complain like that, I'm like, yeah, yeah, I think every era had its good points.
Me too.
Yeah, like, it's funny watching movies that were made before I was born. And it's like, wow, because if it's not special effects or something, I'm seeing this is the 60s or this is the 50s, or this is the 40s. It's just kind of cool.
When
So,
um when we were working on the X-Files in the mid 1990s, um, you know, computer graphics CGI
hmm.
was kind of in its infancy. They'd done some stuff with Lawnmower Man and a couple of other movies. But really into like 90, 95, 96, CGI and the TV and film industry were starting to connect. And we were getting a lot of questions like, do you see your job dying because everything will just be done with CGI? And I think CGI and computer graphics for a while, from say, 95 up to 2000, 2001, where you really started to see a lot of things like, the Final Fantasy Spirits Within movie, things like that, that they were really, really pushing the technology as best as they could, even though, I mean, we've gone leaps and bounds since Final Fantasy movie. And so, yeah, so people asked us, like, are you scared that you're going to lose, your job to computer graphics? But I think what happened is they went as far as they could with just computer graphics and realized that it wasn't cutting it. That either A, it looks too perfect, or B, it just looks like shit. So now you find that there's a marriage between the two. They found a balance that works together. One of my favorite examples of that is the Passion of the Christ, the flogging of Jesus. The way that they did that is basically they put the makeup effect on his back with his back all shredded up, covered it with CGI skin, and for every lash, every time he pulled back, the digital skin was being removed, revealing the practical makeup effect on his back. So you
Oh,
have
wow, I didn't know that.
a great marriage of old practical effects and the new technology.
I love The Passion of the Christ. I saw that in the theater.
Yeah,
And
it's
I was
amazing.
I was one of these people because I grew up in a Christian household and I am Christian. I don't go to church anymore because it's become too much about money,
Yeah.
but but um but nonetheless, it's funny because I sat back and watched how many of these people from churches were going to go see this R-rated film that came really close to being an NC-17.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of them really barked about R-rated content, and you can't take your kids to it. That would annoy me. You can't take your kids to see it. I don't have kids,
Yeah.
you know, but nonetheless, the passion. I love that movie, and how Mel Gibson shot it and whatnot. I did not know what you just revealed here now. I had no idea. Especially that shot where that thing sticks in his side and they rip it back and it just like his side like explodes. It just
the actual scene with that, he was holding just a stick that had like the like leather on it.
hmm.
The spike ends were put in with computer graphics, so he was basically being whipped by a wet noodle kind of thing. And they
Oh
did,
wow. I did not know that.
and
Wow.
so basically afterwards with After Effects, that's how they did it. They just pulled the CGI off skin, and then you're left with this grisly looking scene on his back that was all done beforehand but covered up by CGI.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, The Passion of the Christ, I think, got robbed at the Academy Awards that year too, because there was place I know it lost one award to Lemony Snicket's, in a series of unfortunate events, and I'm like, nothing against that movie, but it's like there were places where I think The Passion should have taken it,
Right.
because it was so larger than life, and some of the shots that were in it, I was like, but uh, but nonetheless, I had no idea. I'm gonna look at that a whole lot differently now when I see that.
Yeah,
That is cool.
that's why I love, like, I mean, some of the movies that have come out in, the last decade that have been major events. The making of material. Sometimes I've enjoyed the making of material more than the actual movie, because little things like that you just have no clue about. And most people wouldn't know about, or would think that they did it a completely different way. Yeah, just to see what they do, and how creative they are. Yeah, it just amazes me. And I've been lucky throughout my life. In grade 8, and again, we're from the same age group, we're going to
Hmm.
school at the same time. So in the 70s and 80s, all of our teachers were like drilling into us that you have to finish school, you have to graduate, you have to go to university, and you have to have, like a legitimate career, a doctor, lawyer, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Well, in grade 8, we had a teacher towards the end of the year, and it was like a free class or something, and we were sitting there talking to her. And I don't know if she was maybe lamenting at that time, at her age, like she was a teacher and maybe she was thinking, gee, I wish I would have done something else, or this wasn't my passion, or whatever. But she told us, like, guys, like, listen to us as teachers, but don't listen to us about what you should do. Do what you want to do, find your passion. If it isn't a lawyer or a doctor, whatever it is, if you love doing it, pursue that. And I've been very fortunate. I mean, I have worked some other jobs in my life. I was a cleaner myself for a while.
Hmm.
I've done warehouse work, telemarketing, all that kind of stuff. But primarily, every job that I've ever had, from the music industry, then I worked in the TV industry. And then after that, I was very fortunate to work for electronic arts in the gaming industry. And then unfortunately, my arthritis happened when I was, pretty young, and took me out of the workforce at a young age. But up until that point, I'd worked in the entertainment industry. I never dreamed when I was 16 or 17 or 18 that I'd end up working, on anything like the X Files or the TV industry, or for that matter, the gaming industry. I would never even would have thought of that. But again, I'm lucky that I'm a quick learner and I've got an open mind. And when Electronic Arts, when they hired me, they saw my brain as, unmolded clay. Uh, the job that I got with Electronic Arts was working in the technology department with motion capture. And motion capture at that point wasn't taught anywhere. You couldn't take a course on how to do it. A lot of the technology that Electronic Arts was using was their own proprietary stuff. So that I that they could take my brain and mold it and teach me, and that I could do that. That was great for them, and it worked out for me, because I got to work in a field again that I never had any inkling that I would ever be there. Sometimes I think to myself, and I've even said that I had no business working in the TV industry, or the video game industry. The video game industry even more so, because I never even owned a console. I didn't own a console until the PlayStation 2 came out. I didn't own
Hmm.
a computer. I didn't play video games. I didn't care about video games. But just the opportunity that presented itself was, again, very fortuitous to me, and opened a lot of doors. And yeah, I had a great time working at Electronic Arts, as much as it was working in the film or music industry.
I'm so sorry to hear about the arthritis. Do you want to go into what had happened there and and how it's affected you? I mean, I know it's pretty obvious, but I want to hear it from your perspective.
Sure. So I'm adopted, and this plays into a lot of unknowns. When you're adopted, I don't know anything about my birth parents' health or any diseases or anything like that. I was a very active guy, skateboarding, biking. I walked or skateboarded almost everywhere I went. And after I left working on the X Files, which was a lot of work on my feet.
Hmm.
And then when I first applied with Electronic Arts, I got hired into their quality assurance, which was testing video games. So I went from walking to sitting on my butt for hours and hours a day. And when I started at Electronic Arts in 1998, I believe, we were getting ready. So at that point, Electronic Arts Canada, which was its home was in Burnaby, British Columbia, but its departments were all in different buildings. So in 1998 and into 99, they built this massive campus that was just a couple of blocks from my house, fortuitously, and moved everybody into one building. And that whole move from these satellite buildings to one was going to take place over the Christmas holiday season, because, I mean, a video game corporation doesn't have downtime. Like, you can't not be working on something. So to take a week out of everybody's lives and shut down Electronic Arts so we could move everybody into one building, it was a lot of work. And I volunteered to work on the move crew that set up everything, all of the computers that went into the new building and all that stuff. And that was a lot of work on our feet, and my feet started to hurt. And I just thought, well, I'm out of shape. I've been sitting for a long time, so I'm just out of shape. So I just kind of continued on. It did settle down a bit. And then when I got hired into the motion capture department, again, it's working on your feet a lot, because you're working with, stunt people and athletes, and they're being filmed in a capture space. And yeah, there's a lot of walking involved. So when that was going on, my left foot was really bothering me. There was a lot of inflammation. We worked, again, with, like I said, with a lot of athletes. So we had a sports physiotherapist that worked with us in motion capture, and he saw me limping around all the time. And he's like, "What's going on with your foot?" And I said, "I don't know. It's just been bugging me for months." So he got me up to his office and fit me for orthotics for my feet, and I got those, and they worked for about 3 months. And then both of my feet just exploded with inflammation from heel to toe. Was so bad and so quickly that within 6 months, I went from walking and running to being in a wheelchair, and had no idea what was going on. Of course, I was going to see my doctor, and he was trying to find out what was going on. I was sent to a bunch of different doctors who all made a bunch of wrong guesses.
Hmm.
Uh, and because I was losing my ability to walk, my doctor referred me to a physiotherapy at the Burnaby Hospital. And once I got in there, the physiotherapist there was like, "What is wrong? Like, how is this possible that your feet are in such swollen condition and nobody knows what's going on?" And I'm like, "I'm the wrong guy to ask, because I'm trying to find out too." So through her, my physiotherapist, she got me referred to a rheumatologist, and it took a year before I was able to see the rheumatologist. But I was going to physio, so we were trying to get a control on the inflammation. But once the once the rheumatologist saw me, I was diagnosed in 5 minutes as having psoriatic arthritis. Now, psoriatic arthritis is the same disease process that causes psoriasis on your skin, like skin lesions. So that
Yeah.
that process that causes psoriasis was attacking my joints. I didn't have any psoriasis. I didn't have any skin lesions at that time. So this was like just this interior attack on my joints that came out of nowhere. And unfortunately, it took away my career, it took away my ability to work. I don't know if you watched the video that I posted about the presentation. I actually pitched an entire concept to Electronic Arts, and pretty much got a green light to go ahead on this concept, which was a virtual universe. So instead of you talking and chatting on your headset to other gamers, you would actually go into a virtual room with other players that had avatars and be able to converse and interact with them in that world. And then from there, go right into the video games that Electronic Arts had. It was like, as I said in the video that I did, it was like the best idea that I ever had in my life. I was always immersed with such creative people that, and again, like I said, like I felt I had no business being at Electronic Arts, but being immersed with all of these creative people influenced me so much that I something grew within inside me, this idea, and I started to grow and build this idea and got it to a point that it could happen, but because of my health, just fizzled. So that was hard, very, very hard. And to leave Electronic Arts was very, very hard. I loved being there. I loved working there. I loved the people there. I loved the work ethic. And so to have this out of control process controlling my life sucked.
Yeah.
And to have to leave work was one of the hardest things. Yeah, it was really hard, and especially to have come up with something of my own that I pitched to the president of Electronic Arts. I've got a grade 9 education on paper, Greg. I quit school after grade 10. I never graduated, never got my GED. So I'm not tooting my own horn, but to have no education and to be sitting in front of the president of the worldwide studios for Electronic Arts was huge for me, and a huge victory to all those people who told me, you're going to be a bum. No one's ever going to hire you to even dig a ditch because I didn't graduate from high school. To be in that position was just like not a yeah, I told you so, because I never knew I'd end up there, but just showed that with drive and perseverance, with faith in yourself, and being immersed in the right environments, that amazing things can happen. And unfortunately, the arthritis happened and took all that away. But I don't have any regrets. Again, I mean, just in what we've talked about tonight, I hope to other people that it would be impressive that this long-haired metal guy from what I call Canada's butthole in New Brunswick, was able to do all of these things. And then sadly, at 26, my arthritis hit and took me out of the working game. I've had a lot of adventures and great times since then. When I moved back to Fredericton here in 2012, a few years later, I met Tim Rain, who invited me up to the station. Not to ramble here, my parents had both been faculty at UNB, so UNB had been part of my life growing up. CHSR had been a part of my life growing up. Once I got to be, in my first band, I started when I was 14, and I took my cassette that I recorded on a ghetto blaster in my living room, and I took it up to CHSR, and I was a 14-year-old snotty little kid, and I was like, here's my crappy tape, play it. And CHSR played our music. So that was huge for me as a 14-year-old kid. And then later on with Dreamkick and the Wasteland Zombies, they were supportive with that. So yeah, just a lot of support throughout my life, and very fortunate to grow up when I did, where I was. Even with the arthritis, Greg, I have very few regrets in my life. I got some little things here and there. I wish I was a little better with money and saving and stuff.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but other than that, man, I've been very, very lucky, very, very fortunate in my life to be able to do the things that I did and to be a part of the projects that I was a part of. I don't take that for granted. I hope that I never come off as bragging or having an ego this big, like I worked on the X-Files, blah blah blah. We were lucky, very, very lucky to be a part of that. And yeah, it's a great history that I've got in my life, and so I'm pretty happy with that, despite you know being disabled.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because I know you're disabled, but I never look at you as disabled. I never look at you that way because I mean you were um the music supervisor at CHSR, and that's what you were doing when I arrived, and I arrived there in '05, so I guess I was there before you, wasn't I?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Gee, I didn't realize that. Wow.
Well, actually, well, really, in 1994, I actually had a morning radio show. That I think it was like the spring of 1994, and I did it right up until I moved to Vancouver. But again, like I was saying, I grew up with CHSR. The Crazy Train started in like the late 70s and became officially the Crazy Train in the 1980s. And that was a huge influence for me. Again, it was something, that I gave as an independent artist as a kid. They would play my music was again massive for us as
Yep.
kids. And so when I met Tim, and hello there, kitty. When I met Tim, and you want some screen time, do you? He told me about the music director job, which was volunteer. So I volunteered to do that. And then when he told me nobody was doing the Crazy Train, I was kind of floored. It's known as one of Canada's longest running heavy metal radio shows. And Tim was like, "Why don't you do it?" And the thought never even occurred to me, man. And I was like, "Oh, like wow, like I have the opportunity to do this show that was so influential to me as a kid." And Stephen Dunnett was my co-host for a bit,
Hmm.
and Steve was one of the original hosts of the Crazy Train back in the 1980s. I think his run was from like 1983 to like 86, maybe. Then Jason Chipley went on to work in the film industry. Uh,
Yep.
he's worked with Trailer Park Boys, and does a lot of work in Nova Scotia now. But
Hobo with a shotgun. I think he was involved with that.
yeah,
I
Hobo with
did.
Shotgun.
I interviewed Brian Downey from that film.
Oh, did you? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, but because you were doing Crazy Train there for a long time, and it kind of takes you back to those days, and but it reminds me, your story reminds me a lot what I've been dealing with too, because when actually it was my friend Colin Smart, my best friend, who had recommended, because I've been reviewing movies since 1996, and I just did that for fun. I still do it, but it's funny because he was the one that suggested I go up to CHSR and asked them if they had a film critic. And I remember at the time, Melissa Montgomery was the program director, and she said we don't have a film critic. So I brought my portfolio in, and she was pretty taken with it, and I got trained, and I was in, and from there it's just I'm still there. I've missed a little bit of time because where I work at the hospital, sometimes my sleep gets in the way, but they're
Well,
really good. They're good
well,
with me there.
and also COVID, like nobody was really allowed to go into the station for a while, right?
No, that's why I'm doing these on Zoom now,
Yeah, yeah.
it's yeah, but I'm very fond of the station and the opportunities, I think it's great and but nonetheless, it's just that where things have come, and I ended up doing the interviews. Um, the it's just somebody had told me 10 years ago I'd be going to Toronto to do cons. I'd say, no, you're nuts, because I would get his story with me is I would get homesick going to Moncton or St. John. So imagine what I was feeling when Lisa Langlois from the movie Class of 1984 tells me on our second interview, says, invites me to go to Toronto to assist her at Horrorama.
Yeah.
I couldn't say no. Like that was one of those movies at my uncle's store when I grew up. I knew her, and I was like, wow, I couldn't say no. And I was petrified. And at the time, I worked at our family water plant, spring water plant, for 19 years.
Right.
And when Dad's ALS started acting up, and he ended up having to sell the business. And I remember, I'm going to give Roger Jean, who does the jazz and blues show at the station, he said to me one day, he says, Greg, you're not working, you got money saved, you're not married, and you don't have children. You got this actress who you like inviting you to assist her at this event. Go.
Yeah.
And that was when I decided, yeah, I'm going to go. And I remember Dad saying it's going to cost you money, but it's like, yeah, but I got to take the chance,
Yeah.
And now here's a funny thing is I was at first worried about getting on a plane. And it was nice that first year I went, because so not to have to leave my car at the airport, I left it at my folks, and Dad was still able to drive then, and he and Mom drove me to the airport. So Dad got to see me off that first year. So ever since now, my brother Andrew takes me. But it's funny because when I got in the plane, had the gravel and stuff like that. I didn't really need it, because once we started getting up in the air, I got a rush out of it. And I was like, it's like taking a bus,
Yep.
And they served food up there. I was like, okay, this is a plus. And we touched down in Toronto. And I remember when I met Lisa, we met at the Royal Hotel. Right in front of it, because it was right there handy to that was where the shuttle bus would drop people off that took you from the airport. And she met me there and gave me a little tour and a little bit of this. And we went to a restaurant, and she asked me a lot about New Brunswick, because she'd never been here, and she just moved back from Los Angeles because she grew up in Toronto. And she asked me a lot about New Brunswick, and the one thing going through my head through our talks was, why in the fuck am I not feeling homesick? Why is it I go to Moncton or St. John and I'm just feeling homesick? I come to Toronto and I didn't want to come home. I went to Toronto every year since 2017, with the exception of 2020, because I don't know, something decided to screw around with our society all
Yeah.
over. But I started going to two cons a year in Toronto, Horrorama and Frightmare in the Falls, and it's just I started making more connections. And Lisa has trained me so well in the subways now and the streetcars. It's like I can get off that plane and know exactly where I'm going. And it's really kind of cool to come from this little city here in Fredericton to just go in and be able to navigate myself and be fine.
Yeah.
And she also schooled me on, getting business cards made up, and there's various things, pointers she gave me about the cons, and I've done two with her. But every time I go to Toronto, we connect, and get together. And usually I save my scene points at the movie theaters for Toronto, and I always ask Lisa, I was like, any movies you want to see? 'Cause I got freebies. And so that is always fun. And I've made connections with other people. Like the business cards was great because I remember meeting Vernon Wells from the Road Warrior, and gave him my business cards, and he gave me his. So, and when I called him, he remembered who I was. So that was pretty cool. And stuff like that just opens up, and it's like you said about the X Files. It's like, am I really doing this? Am I really doing this? Because this was something that just kind of landed on me. And I remember it happened through that Tommy Wiseau interview that an ex-colleague of mine had ended up making the connection, and it was like after that connection, it's like, who else can I do this with?
right?
And I'm still doing it. Got a YouTube channel and on
And
Spotify.
and all you had to do this was do it. And that's, I think, and I don't want to I don't want to like break the dam and let everybody know that it's that easy, but really I think it is. Like again, it goes back to what I was saying about everybody's got a telephone, and all you got to do is ask them, and the worst thing they're going to say is no. um and there are lots of examples, like Marilyn Manson. My buddy Mike had done a bunch of sculptures that were based off of some of the earlier songs that Manson had wrote, and they were coming to Vancouver. We'd already bought our tickets. We weren't looking to go to a free concert or anything. We weren't even really looking to meet the guy. But I said to Mike, I said, well, they're coming. We got our tickets. I said, let me see if I can figure out how to get a hold of them and see if we can get your stuff to Mr. Manson. And all it really took was like opening up the CD and Interscope Records, get the phone number for Interscope Records, make a phone call. Again, because we worked on the X Files, it did probably have a little bit of weight behind it than just somebody calling up and saying, hey, I got some stuff I want to give to Marilyn Manson. But again, like doing that, just making that phone call. And I told them, like, we've already got our tickets. We don't want a free ride or anything. We just want to give them these things that Mike has done. And so they were like, yeah, yeah, totally fine, cool. Like, you guys can come and meet. And then, because I had told them we did special effects makeup, they called back a couple of days later, and Marilyn Manson asked if we could make some stuff for a record store signing they were doing in Vancouver, and also for a couple of props for the tour that he was on. So again, just that simple phone call that could have been no, and that would have been the end of it. But because I took the chance to reach out and do this, it worked out really well for us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Any chance that you're going to come back to the station, because it was always fun seeing you and Roger there and Tammy Ayward and some of the really cool people there. We'd always sit down and chat, and because I kind of miss those days, and I was there this past Sunday, because wanted to let Aaron know that I'm still in the land of the living. She understood because, where I'm working at the hospital now. Yeah. Um, but, I tried to keep up appearances at the station, but,
Now, I don't know, I don't know if you'll have to like edit this out or stop or whatever, but I've heard that the station's going to be like cut in half, like they're doing
oh, yeah,
some
that's true.
major renovations to the sub. So what's going on?
Yeah, I heard about that, um, this will be unlisted for a while, but
Yeah.
still, I do know that I think there's going to be an elevator put in, which I'll be frank, it's probably a good idea for people that are disabled, but there's going to be um I know they have one there for. Actually, I didn't know till I cleaned there for a while. They had elevators there, but they're putting another elevator in there somewhere, and at least that's from what my vantage point anyway. I'm not keen on all the details,
Right,
but it's going to come up where CHSR right underneath where it is. So CHSR is going to lose some space. But one of the things I love about CHSR, it's like, okay, we're going to lose some space, bummer. But when I was there last night, it's like they're making progress and moving stuff around, and it's like, okay, it's like taking a Rubik's cube, and it's like, yeah, things are looking a little messy here, but let's turn this way and this way, maybe this in this direction, and see what we can make.
right.
And I know the minds up there at work are going to come up with something that's going to be really cool. So I got no doubt that CHSR is going to walk through this, and we're still going to have something there. I'm really proud to be part of the station there, and I'm glad Colin told me about it. But you know, um, uh, like I said, for the last short while, a lot of it had to do with COVID.
Yeah,
But I never got COVID, knock on wood. But
me neither. So far,
yeah,
knock on wood.
yeah. But being away from the station was kind of weird, because I always missed those times, like when Roger be there and Hammy would be there and you would be there, and it was just a fun little commodity, and occasionally Mark and Aaron would be there, and so so yeah, and I really appreciate when Aaron reached out to me because I hadn't been there in a few weeks, because Jeff Foxworthy once told a joke where he said that when you're young, you want sex all the time. When you're older, you'll take the sleep and hope you have a dream about sex. And taking the sex part aside, I find I'm sleeping a lot more than I used to when I was young.
Right.
Because when I get home from the hospital, I do my little things I need to do, and occasionally I still go to the movie theater, but I find a lot of times I just crash, you know, and sleep because I got a CPAP machine too now because I found out that I got extreme sleep apnea, and so I crash. And there's been some Sunday nights where I gotta get out of the station where it's like, well, I gotta work overnight. I could have a few extra hours to sleep.
Right.
And but I'm like, yeah, I made the effort and I made it there at the station last night to to do that because I didn't want them to think I was ditching them and and I think they know that, but I'll keep things up on my end, because CHSR created an opportunity for me to have a platform and it's led to this platform, and I don't plan, even if I move to Toronto, if I can figure out how to send files to them, I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Um, being able to send stuff off. Um, I wouldn't have to go to the station. They could just stick it in,
Yeah.
but uh, but even if I move to Toronto, I still kind of want to keep my CHSR connection. Again, another difference between now and previous, I can still be part of that station. Like I've got somebody in Australia that still does a show in CHSR and just sends us stuff. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's cool that we're able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just not very tech savvy. That's the thing.
I
But
think, uh, I mean, maybe every community college radio station is like that. But I really see like a huge advantage of CHSR, excuse me. So someone like Johnny James, who is
yeah,
a journalism student at St. Thomas, he was the only journalism student I know of that discovered about CHSR, came to do and want to learn how to do a show. And I told him, I was like, bro, like for journalism or any job, this is like everything you do at the station can put on a resume, because when you do your show, and people watching may not know, what you do and what we do for a radio show. It's all you. Like, we don't have people that are editing our stuff. We don't have people that are, doing all the tech work for us. We have to learn that ourselves. So everything from being a show host to an editor to a producer, all of those things you have done now, and you can put on your resume. And that's what I was telling the Johnny, like, why the other journalism students don't see the benefit of coming to the station. And Christ, or excuse me, heck, even if you don't do a radio show, there's other stuff you can still do there that would be great for your resume. And yeah, like I just think I think Johnny, and there might be other students that I didn't know about. I know that there have been other students there, but Johnny's about the only student that I know that actually used CHSR for what it's used for. The rest of us are just, we're not university students. Heck, we're older guys that we have our passions, you, your movie, and me, music. And this was a way for us to be able to, talk to people about the things that we love and introduce them to those things in case they didn't know about them. That was always my view about the Crazy Train, was it's kind of a little bit nefarious and evil, but I was like, I can program what you're going to listen to. And if you don't like it, you can turn me off or change the channel.
Mm-hmm.
But all of it was just, yeah, it's such a blast to do that. I love doing the radio show. I love being at the station, but again, just my health, it was a little bit is too much for me. And despite it not having, I didn't really have any obligations to be there. I didn't have, there was really no pressure, but even without the pressure, there was still pressure to do things like, it's no easy thing to put together a radio show. You have to work at it. You just can't go in and, I mean, once you get good at it, I could go, if I didn't have a show ready, I could pull stuff out of the play box and wing it for a half an hour or an hour, but people could probably tell. And if you really want to do a good show, you've got to put some effort into it. You've got to put some investigation so you know what you're talking about, those kind of things. So I had thought, well, maybe if I could get somebody to put together the show for me, like do the legwork, then I could just be like a voice to the show. But then I thought, well, even with that, I still have to know what I'm talking about. I still would have to like research whatever bands I'm playing and give them some information on that kind of thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If my health really improves, Greg, I'd love to go back. But sadly, unfortunately, for right now, I can't do any of that stuff right now. So
Yeah, that's unfortunate because the station's not the same without you, man.
it's not the same without any of us. I mean, whether it's Joe Blades or
Oh
anybody
yeah.
else who's left, like everybody who's been at the station has left a mark on it in some way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's been thousands of people that have had shows that have gone through that station. But again, I think everybody leaves a little piece of them, and everybody takes a little piece of them with CHSR. But I love the station. I do. If I won the lottery, I would do whatever I could to ensure that they're going to keep on going. It's hard for community radio now. I mean, none of the students care really about community radio or any of that stuff. So it's been an uphill battle for not only them but other stations for a while. And one of the weird things about me is I hate radio. I don't listen to radio. I don't like the idea of, and this is the flip side of what I was just saying about how we can program what you're going to hear. I don't like somebody else telling me what I'm going to listen to, Greg. But I love making my own show and letting those people listen to it. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of radio. But I understand and I love the need for community radio and what it does for people, for every one of us like ourselves. Like some people used to talk about how everybody's a little weird, and I think you gotta be. I think you got to be for community radio or community television. You got to have a little bit of a slant to do it because it's not normally what people would do, kind of thing. It's a little bit of a different path.
One of the things I hated about radio is that, you get a CD and you got 10 or 12 songs on it. You get a song released, and it's played over and over and over. And the first couple times, fine. There are songs right now have a hard time listening to now because I've heard them so much. But yet there's songs on the CD that never get played. And I'm like, why? It's like you got other songs on there and there's other good songs. Why not play some of those songs that don't get played? And I had this conversation with Rob Pinnock about this too, and it's like I never understood that. Even growing up, I never understood that. It's like you get a cassette back then or an LP, and it's like, well, this song gets played a lot, and this song gets played out, but what about this song or this song? I never understood that, and even today, I don't understand that. I understand certain stuff you can't play because of language,
Yeah,
you know, but there's like some stuff I listen to. Like I remember the first song I played when I get down to CHSR was a song called "Together" by Avril Lavigne, which is a song that Chantal Kraviazik wrote. And I love that song, and it's my favorite Avril song, but it was not a single released, and it was
right.
on that second album. And I'm like, I remember requesting it one time on one of the radio stations, and they wouldn't play it. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to hear a song that you're going to play anyway.
Yeah, Skater Boy for the 900,000th time.
Yeah, I wanna hear something else. And so just like last night when I was in there, I opened my show with Together, and then I put a film interview in, or not film interview, an interview, a guest in, my flash drive, and let that play. I did a little introductory, first, but let that play. And but I never understood that. And there's some songs I think, in fact, I think in many ways it might improve radio somewhat if people were able to do that.
Yeah, and
You
that's the
know?
cool thing. I'm not too sure if that's a CRTC guideline right across Canada, or if it's
Mm-hmm.
just something CHSR does. But we're not allowed to play, top 10 hits.
Mm-hmm.
So that opens that door for those other songs that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like you turn on, I mean, I don't even know what radio stations there are anymore, like if the Fox is still going or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
you hear the same Tragically Hip, AC/DC, all those same hits over and over and over again. And you try and go to another station that's a rock station and they're playing, the same thing. So that, again, that's why I like CHSRs, because you'll hear something that you're going to hear a cut that you probably wouldn't hear on other stations.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I also want to and say this, and I would say this to Roger Jean as well, and other people at the station. And I don't want to get into this in too much detail, but I am going to say you guys really had my back when somebody tried to commit slander against me, and I won't name names, but you know, um, I want to thank you and Roger and Mark and Aaron and Tammy and people like that for having my back when things were being said. Stuff I didn't even know was being said because the person wouldn't have enough guts to say it to my face, obviously. And I remember that conversation I had with you, when I got on the phone and you said yourself, like you never heard. And I said, no, what's going on? So stuff was being said even for that. And I want to thank you and Roger and Mark and Aaron, from the bottom of my heart for having my back when I was behind my back. Somebody was trying to sabotage me with slander.
Hey,
And
that's why we're a campus community radio station, the community, right? I mean, we've got to stand behind each other and help each other out. And yeah, I mean, not a problem, Greg. I mean, yeah, it is what it was that happened, and it was not cool. And you didn't know, which I think, again, like, I mean, to not let you know that these things are being said, didn't jive with me. Like, it's not cool to do, kind of thing, right? And
yeah,
this person was a bit of a nuisance, as we all know. So it wasn't necessarily like a means to an end to get rid of this person, but it was just not fair to you. And it wouldn't have been fair to anybody he did it to. So it just, yeah, I mean, not a problem. It just had to be done, and it was done. And thank God it didn't cause too many issues for you in the long run, right? Kind of thing, right? Because I mean, maybe if that would have happened, like, the last couple of years, I mean, that kind of happened before the whole cancel culture thing was going on. So think about that. If that would have happened then, you might have been axed and wouldn't have been able to do anything you're doing now because of that. So thank goodness it didn't happen when, yeah, like you could have been canceled and we wouldn't have never heard any of these interviews that Greg Gilbert ever did, because, cancel culture being wrong for you and what this person was saying. But, how many other cases? Actually, I'll go back to, and I'm not going to completely defend the guy, but Marilyn Manson, he's had numerous allegations made against him within the last few years. He had a warrant out for his arrest last year over
mm-hmm.
an allegation. He turned himself in and stuff, but every one of those allegations have all been disproved. And the biggest allegation, she wrote a letter to the court and said, I was wrong. I'm sorry I did this, and so he had almost his career completely destroyed, like a lot of other people have. And now all of these people that said all these things happened, it's been, found out that they were untrue. And it's really, really, really evil in today's society that we've gone from guilty you're innocent until proven guilty. Now you are guilty. And
Yeah.
sometimes even when your innocence is proven, they're still like, well, still the guy, well, he's just write him off, kind of thing. And it's really like, I think it's unfair, and it's probably, we might never know some artist who got canceled if they
Well,
actually really deserve that.
look at Johnny Depp with Amber
Johnny Depp
Heard.
and Amber Heard. And I'm not talking about, like the guy from fucking Headley, or, some of the other guys that have gotten canceled because they have done very, very nefarious things that have been proven. But
Mm-hmm.
again, another great example, Johnny Depp got lost the Pirates of the Caribbean. Everybody hated the guy all of a sudden. He was trash. He was a woman beater. Screw this guy. And come to prove that she was the problem. She was the attacker. She was the liar. And
She
now,
was she was the bed shitter.
yeah, and he had to suffer for that, and his career will still continue to suffer, even though this has been disproven and all that's happened. But the damage is done, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really, really heavy duty damage. That kind of thing. I mean, the allegations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that affected you. Yeah, people people need to think before they take action, and think about the consequences of the actions that they're taking before they take those actions.
Yeah, because had I taken it to court, I know I could have proven my end. I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
he would not have been able. And I had several people, including at CHSR, including a former roommate of his, including people that he used to work with, you know, who said they'd stand by me. So
he's
this
got a
guy
tra-
was, yeah. So he was,
he's got a track record for being a loser.
yeah. So, um, I don't know what I did, you know, but all of a sudden,
I think he was just jealous.
and there was no reason to be,
No, no, no.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I think that there's a lot of great talent, especially coming out of CHSR, and like I said, we just lost Joe Blades a few years back, and that was a major loss, but we've got some major talented people, and I've interviewed people from a lot of films and movies that we all know and love, but it's always nice, to step back and talk to somebody from right in my area.
Right.
Um, you're one of a handful of people from here that I've had on the show because it's like nobody knows where the fuck New Brunswick, let alone Fredericton is. And it's kind of weird that way, but but um but no, definitely want to express my appreciation because you guys did stand by me and um that was never forgotten and um and I'm really glad I was able to have you come on here tonight because like I said, um and it's not that I wasn't ever going to have you come on either. It's just, it's just you think of something when you're at work and then it leaves your mind.
Yeah.
And I saw you had your Uncle Swamp Ass videos up, and I was like, I have got to write his name down and reach out to him, and finally have him on, and do this. How do you like where you're staying now, because you're not in the same spot anymore?
It's it's actually pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I'm over here in Devon. Uh, the area has always had a little bit of a, I think of a stigma on the north side, which it lives up to that stigma in some aspects. We got a house on the corner here that is nefarious for thieves living there. My neighbor just had his bike stolen a couple of weeks ago, and we just actually found it over on Gibson Street. So he's one of the lucky ones. Um, but it's no, I like it here. It's not too bad. I'm still close. Like the trail is like literally like 2 minutes behind me here. And as we know with the trail in Fredericton, you can get anywhere in the city on the trail. So I'm pretty close to like groceries and all the amenities that I need. Like where I lived
Mhm.
on the south side, I was close to Sobeys and that kind of thing. So it's pretty much the same thing on this side. And again, like on that side, the trail was like right behind my house again. There's some pretty cool people that live around me. Carl Gans, who works at Tony's Music Box and is a local musician. He's my neighbor just over here. Who else is over here? Matt Carter, who does Grid City Magazine and all that. He's just a couple of blocks away. A bunch of musicians that I grew up with, they're all around in this area. So the area is kind of having a little bit of gentrification between the old rundown, drugged out houses, and then a lot of young people are coming in and buying the old houses, renovating them. So it's turning around. But I don't mind it here. It's kind of funny. Like to go to the south side is like going to another city. Like I barely get over to the south side these days, kind of thing. So it's always kind of neat when I'm over there. It's like, wow, I've been over here for a while. And I was a south sider growing up. Like I don't know much about the north side. Like the Devon lumber over here. I went for a walk when I first moved here, and this big lumber yard opens in front of me. I'm like, what the heck is this? Oh yeah, we have a lumber yard over here. Oh yeah, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been cool. Um,
I know you
I
had a house burned down not too long ago.
Oh my God. I can look
Yeah.
out the window here and still look at the shell of it. Yeah. And I mean, that was on Beaverbrook Street, the house that was next door to us burned there too. I
Oh,
had nothing
gee.
to do with these fires. Nothing. I just lived next door. That's it. But yeah, yeah. So there's been some crazy things that have happened. There was a lockdown. I don't think, Greg, on the south side, I was ever near a lockdown. One day I left and I was going to go to the trail, which is just right over here. And as I reached to the end of the driveway, I see two police cars, and the police officers are standing there with their like carbines, like the M16s. And
Yeah.
and instead of saying, hey, this area is under lockdown, get back inside, like I was going to go walk down the trail and go to wherever I was going, to St. Mary's Grocery. So when I started to turn that way, the only thing the officer said to me was, you can't come this way. You'll have to go down Union Street. So I was like, okay. So I went going down Union Street, and I was going again to St. Mary's Groceries. So I was going to have to kind of cross that path. And every street that I got to, and I looked up to the trail, I could see a police officer with a carbine and a police car. And I'm like, what is going on here? And so I walked over and got up to St. Mary's, and somebody, just when I get there, is like, oh, everything's closed down right now. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, it's under lockdown. And I'm like, I've passed by three different police officers holding machine guns, and not one of them has said, you shouldn't be here. There's somebody on the loose with a gun right now that we're looking for, and you shouldn't be out walking around. No one ever said that. And
Oh, wow.
I go over to Giant Tiger, and it's closed, like locked up. And there's a woman at the door, and I like try the door, and she's like, no, we're on. She's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you outside? Everything's locked down. And I'm like, what is going on? And I didn't know until I got back to Neal Street and ran into a neighbor, and he was the one who told me about the guy that was on the loose with a gun. And again, like this cop that was right here, like, a couple of feet away from me, who should have said, you shouldn't be outside, go back inside. Nothing. Just like, go ahead, carry on, buddy. Like,
Oh, my goodness.
so and that's kind of weird stuff for Fredericton. I mean, as a whole, I mean, yes, we did have the shootings that happened here. Horrible. I lost two friends in that shooting. I moved back from Vancouver, not specifically because of gang violence, but when you live in a big city like that, like it's not, I mean, it happens a lot. It is shocking. In Vancouver, there was a lot of gang violence that was going on. About a block away from my house, there was basically a gangster was gunned down on his parents' doorstep. He was visiting his parents in our neighborhood, which wasn't, I mean, it wasn't like a rich neighborhood, but it wasn't a run down one. We didn't have junkies and, bad things happening in our neighborhood. But this guy goes to visit his parents and gets killed by a rival gang. And I'm walking, a few days later after this murder happens, there's still police tape and blood all over the doorstep and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm hearing stories in Surrey. There was a gangster's girlfriend who was in an SUV who pulled up to a red light, her child in a baby seat behind her, and somebody came up to the door of the driver's side and shot her in the head with her baby in the back. So that kind of violence was happening in Vancouver. And again, that wasn't the prime reason why I left, but one of the reasons. And then you think Fredericton's small, safe, not a lot of bad things happen here. And I move home, and I mean, no one I knew in Vancouver ever got shot or killed, by anybody out there. And I moved back home, and then two of my friends are murdered by a psychopath here in the city. So it's,
Wow.
that kind of shit can happen anywhere. And it's unfortunate. I mean, obviously unfortunate that it happens at all. But Oh, there's my litter box going. Sorry about this, Greg. It's very loud and horrible.
Oh, I don't hear it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I do. I've got. Sorry to sidetrack here. I've got my older brother and his wife gave me this. It's like an automatic litter box. So
Yeah.
it's got every once in a while it's got this little rake that goes through and pushes everything into a little basket. So instead of scooping everything, you just take out this basket and toss the crap out. But after a while, because it's the litter, it's really gritty, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's wearing down a lot of the parts, and now it's just like somebody taking their nails down chalk. I really should just throw the thing out. I want to get a shotgun and actually shoot it when it dies because I just hate the thing so much. But anyways, that was my litter box.
My
Edit,
cat.
edit. Please, for
Oh,
the love of God, don't include that in
I don't know how to edit these. That's okay. I got the litter box for my cat that's got the top and the bottom and the scoop you pull out from the side of it. You tip it up and
yeah.
yeah.
So
I
you're
hear
you're
my huh?
you're in Skyline Acres, you said?
No. I'm not in Skyline. No, I'm up at the top of Smythe.
Oh, it's Smythe.
Hmm.
So do you have a view where like are you on the top floor or anything? Do you have a
No, I'm in a basement.
ah no view
But
of anything?
but sometimes I'll hear skittles in the litter box, and he'll be in there and in there and in there. And I'm like, Kitty, everything's been discovered.
They're playing volleyball. That's what's going
Yeah, Kitty. I mean, I don't know what you're looking for, but everything's been discovered.
on.
But but nonetheless, what's you got anything coming up? I know you're still involved with music and whatnot. What's in the future that you're undertaking? Because I know you're always up to something.
Actually, I'm not doing any. Well, no, actually, I am doing something musically, but I can't talk about it right yet.
Okay,
Um,
that's all right.
it's going to be all I'll say about it is it's going to be probably my swan song. It'll probably be the last thing that I do musically. It's what I'm setting up. I'm going to be going out with a big bang. And I got a great idea, and I'm starting to gather the people to make this vision come true as we speak, kind of thing. As for other stuff that's going on, last year was a really, really horrible year for me. Like I said, I'm adopted. I found out that my birth mother passed away just last spring. I never
Mm,
got to meet her. So that was a huge, huge loss for me. And then towards the end of December this year, so a few years ago, a guy from Burbank, California, who's in the makeup effects industry, he got a hold of me through Messenger because he had heard through another friend of ours, well, through Mike, my buddy, that I have some props and some merchandise and articles left over from the X Files. And of course, now that the show's done and all that stuff, people are looking to collect a lot of those things. So this guy messaged me and said, I heard you have some props that you might be interested in selling. And I was interested in selling them. I think when he got a hold of me was when I was like I had packed everything and was getting ready to move over here. So I said, look, I just can't deal with that right now. Let me get settled in and get all that stuff done, and we can talk later. And I really just kind of forgot about it. And then in November, I think it was, I had to get up in my attic here because I just got a bachelor apartment. So I have a lot of stuff in the attic. And I had to get some winter clothes and not even thinking about Jesse, this guy from Burbank, but I happened to grab the box that had a bunch of the X Files props in it and brought it down with me. And just posting on Facebook, I had posted, I went up to the attic today to get my winter gear, and Jesse saw this and he was like, "Did you get the box?" And I was like, "You know what? I actually did get the box." So this guy from Burbank bought an alien head that was from an X-Files episode, and I have some other props. And he said after we had made this transaction, he said, he's got a lot of stuff. I've got a bunch of T-shirts that were given to just the crew on the X-Files, and I was like showing those to him, and I said, do you have these? Do you want to buy them? And he's like, oh yeah, I got those off Chris Carter himself. So he's pretty set up in Burbank, but he did tell me, I'll help you find some other people that might be interested in buying your stuff. So this led to me finding out about the X-Files Museum. So the X-Files Museum is in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is just a couple hours north of New York City. Jim, sorry, I forgot his last name. It's okay. Jim and his wife, Kelly, when the X-Files began back in the 1990s, the first thing that he collected was some X-Files trading cards. And that collection from those trading cards has grown into a museum with over 10,000 items from the X-Files show and movies.
Oh, wow.
And they did their grand opening last summer, I believe it was. Chris Carter actually came to the grand opening and was there to sign autographs. There's pictures online and even video. I was just watching the video interview with Chris Carter a little earlier this evening, because they were telling me that when Chris came, like, he really didn't think that anybody would be interested in anything. So he was blown away that there was a literally lineup around the block to get inside the X-Files Museum, the grand opening. I think the lineup, 2 days in a row, was that long. And Chris Carter was just like, I can't believe that so many people are here to see this stuff. So Jesse put me in touch with Jim from the X-Files Museum, and they're interested in a lot of stuff. Just give me a second here. Hold on.
Sure. Boy, I love those flickering lights. Wow. Yeah, I love your little setup there.
This,
There you go.
all of this is going to be going to the X-Files Museum. Oh, there's an alarm going off. Hold on a second here. And I've got everything. These are some X-Files Golden Globe Awards sunglasses.
Oh, wow.
And then I've got all kinds of magazines. Where is it here? Hold on a second here. Where are they? Stuff like this. Some of the magazines that I have, because they're printed in Canada, are different than the American versions that came out.
Mm-hmm.
So they want all that kind of stuff, and then all kinds of stuff like this is a visitor's pass for shooting X-Files. Like, they want stuff like this. Gillian Anderson promo.
There you go.
And then, so stuff like this is some sketches that were done for. So there was an episode where there were all these cockroaches that were infesting this town, and we had to build like, you know what a roach motel is, like they catch bugs. Yeah, so we had to build basically like a bigger scale version of a roach motel with like a mechanical cockroach dying in it. So this is just some concept sketches from that. So this is the kind of things that they're looking for. And then I do have some other like bigger props. The big prop that I'm selling them, the big thing that I'm so happy to get rid of, Greg, is the sea monster head. So in season 3 or 4, there was a sea monster episode. It was a really, really rough episode for us at the shop. It gave me nightmares for several nights after working on that episode, shooting on set. So when we were switching shops. There was a bunch of stuff that was just being thrown out. So we grabbed a bunch of stuff because we thought it might be worth some money later. And we were right, it would be. And so this big freaking sea monster head was one of the things that I had taken from the shop. I had it in my living room for years. My apartment's too small for it to be around in here. So he's up in the attic, but they're also going to be taking that as well. So I'm really super happy. Like even a lot of, let's see if I can find some good ones for you here. Like photos that were taken from the set. Where are they? Sorry. Trying to find the good ones here. Oh no. Where the heck is it? You've probably seen this one. This is the crew with David Hasselhoff.
Okay, yeah.
We worked on Fox's version of Nick Fury, and that happened long before the Marvel universe started doing their thing. This is a picture of me as an alien in my
Oh,
alien garb.
you haven't changed a whole lot, you know.
I thought I have, yeah, here we go. So this is me on location with an RCMP officer. He asked to have his picture taken with me. I asked him if I could hold his gun for one of the pictures, but he wouldn't let me. I thought it would have been awesome, an alien holding an RCMP officer's gun. Ha! And that's another picture of me with the officer. So yeah, like all of this stuff. And some people are like, you know, like, do you want to get rid of this stuff? Like, aren't you going to miss it? Don't you want to keep it? But to be honest, man, if fans of the show can see this stuff, I'd rather that happen than it just sitting here in my house, right? No one's going to see any of this stuff if it's just sitting in my house. So yeah, I've got no, like some stuff they're buying from me and some stuff I'm actually donating to the museum because it's doing me no good sitting here, and it won't do me any good sitting here. So yeah, I'm overjoyed to be able to give this to the X-Files Museum. This summer, they're going to be, so this year actually is the 30th anniversary of the X-Files. And the X-Files Museum in Saratoga Springs, New York, July 7th and 8th, I believe. They're going to be having a huge convention, X-Files convention there. They've got the museum open, and there's also a convention center that they're renting out. They're starting to announce special guests that are going to be appearing at the convention. I plan on going down just to go down because I'd love to go and see it. Jim and Kelly are great people. I've spoken to them a few times on Zoom calls that we've had. And they've got a lot of heart and they put a lot of time and effort into this. And yeah, anything that I can do to help, I'm totally down to do. So that's one other thing that I've been doing is just it seems like this may be the year that I finally kind of do a purge. I've been collecting a lot of stuff throughout my life, comic books to music to whatever. And now that I'm 50, now that I'm getting older, Greg, it's time to start letting go of some of these things that I've collected. Some of them might be worth a lot of money. Some of them might be worth a few cents. But again, I'm happy. I've always immersed myself in all of the things that I love. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be purging or getting rid of is all stuff that's up in the attic, which I can't see. I can't look at, I can't touch. So why have it, right? So pretty soon, yeah, I'm hoping within the next, like in the spring here, I'm going to start getting rid of a lot of stuff that I've got, just to kind of decrease my footprint a little bit. And, because it's time for stuff to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you go to that convent, that should be fun, you know. Is
Oh, hell yeah.
David and Jillian gonna be there?
Not that I'm aware of. Uh, I think I think somebody told David about the X-Files Museum, and I think he endorsed it. Like he hasn't been there, but I think he endorsed it and was like, best of luck to all you're doing, that kind of thing. Jillian lives overseas now, as far as I know. So I haven't heard anything about her going. I think the only guest that they've announced thus far is Mrs. Peacock. And I know you said that you didn't watch the show. You might have heard about a pretty controversial episode that they had, which was all about this inbred family called the Peacocks. And Mother Peacock, Mom Peacock, was a woman with no arms or legs. She lived on a little cart that these four inbred boys of hers, they used to keep her underneath the bed. That's where they kept their mom. And
Mm-hmm.
when they needed to try and keep the family going, they would pull mom out from under the bed. And, that kind of gross stuff would happen. Not on the episode, but this was the idea, right? So this is a really, really crazy episode. And so, yeah, Ma Peacock has been the first guest that they've announced so far. I think Nicholas Leah might be there. I'm not too sure if he's going to be. I've heard his name thrown around a couple of times, and I'm not too sure if Chris Carter is going to be there. Um, and I'm totally talking out of my butt here,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't come, just because it's a 30th anniversary thing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. I don't know, but that could definitely happen. That Chris could show up. I could see that happening. So, but yeah, it looks like it's going to be a blast, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll help you have fun at it, man. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun, you know. Sometime we gotta connect. Haven't connected with so many people in so long. My life right now is basically doing a shift at the hospital, sleep, occasionally get some groceries, maybe go to the movie theater, doing this. I haven't seen my mom's still alive, and I wasn't even out there at Christmas time, you know, because I worked Christmas and New Year's, double pay. So hey, all good stuff. But I said to Mom, I said, don't take offense, but I don't know when I'm going to be out there next because she lives out Bert's Corner, and I'm like, I was like, I never see anybody, and I'm not complaining, you know, because I appreciate my job and doing stuff like this, you know, but people catching time with me right now is is rare now. It's like
Right.
I said, Aaron emailed me about me not being at the station in a while, and I felt so guilty. I'm glad she reached out though, but that's I used to be at the station all the
Oh
time,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, and now it's like I think I spend most of my time sleeping if I'm not like I said before, come on, I thought I was late doing this interview. I said I overslept and but I guess I didn't oversleep.
No.
You were just very anxious to come on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was all gun ho to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, maybe next year, you know, around this time I'll have you back and you could talk about the convention and and your experience there, you know, and yeah, I still get your number, you know. Sometime I'll have to. I'm rarely ever on the north side, you know. Um, just like people on the north side are rarely ever on the south side. What
Yeah.
is it with that, you know? It's, you know, but I don't know. We'll have to connect some point, you know, because I haven't forgotten our chats, and it's always nice to see you're still doing stuff, you know, because it could be easy to be down, way, way down after, you know, you losing the stuff you did. And I like the fact you're staying very optimistic and moving forward, you know. Why are you doing a swan song for a music thing? Like why stop?
Um, hmm, good question. Um, Usually, like, and I'm not going to gripe here. It was my choice to do it. Um, Usually, most of the projects that I've been a part of, the music project, the bands, um, I usually do everything. Like I'm usually the one who books the shows. I do the social media, all of kind of like the management kind of things. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. Um, being being an independent musician, especially around here, and it's not about the money, but still, I mean, even like the attendance and all of that stuff. So sometimes you find that you put in a lot of effort and you don't get much back for it. And that's just the way that Fredericton is now. And it's not
Yeah.
just Fredericton, it's a lot. The dichotomy for live entertainment has really changed. Everything from the expense of alcohol to like students going to university, their mindset's a lot different than it was from, the party animals of the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, right? So a lot of that has changed quite a bit. There's a bit of stress that comes with doing any of that stuff. Like when I book a show for the band, there's four other people in my band. A lot of them, every one of them are married and have kids and jobs. So I book a show for a Friday night. Everything's up, the posters are up, and then somebody's like, "Oh, I totally forgot I have to work that night." So then, it's easy for them to say to me, like, "Sorry, I screwed up. I got to work that night." But it'll be on me to carry the weight of having to go to the promoter and saying, "Sorry, we screwed up. We can't play the show." And I feel really bad about stuff like that
Yeah.
if it does happen, right? So there's a bit of stress that comes with the whole music industry and alleviating myself of all of that stress. Like I haven't been in a band for probably 3 or 4 years now since the Wasteland Zombies did anything. People ask me if I miss it. I miss playing live, but I don't miss the rest of it because again, it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of legwork, and I don't miss it. I don't. I'm happy not to have stress in my life, and I know not that 50's super old or the end of my life or anything, but yeah, I'm just trying to pluck away all of the things that are stressful and make my life as relaxing and comfortable, pain-free as I can in whatever time I have left. So that's why this I would like to be my final nail in the coffin swan song. This is the last thing Chris did. Never say never. Who knows? I might do something else. But that's the vision that I have right now. And I think it's a cool idea that I thought of, and I thought it'd be a very cool way to end, to kind of, what do they say, tie off the end of my career kind of thing. If I pull it off and it goes as well as I hope it will, then yeah, I think it'll be a really great way to end my music career, that way kind of thing.
Well, you know what, Chris? I've delighted to have you on here tonight. This has been a lot of fun, and
I've had a great time too, man.
oh yeah, it was nice catching up. It's been
For
a
sure.
while, but
I was just thinking, I know you're trying to wrap it up here. We should, and maybe I'll try and work on it for next month or whatever. But
uh
let's try and get me, you, Roger, Tammy, and Aaron and Mark, and maybe some other people together for a coffee or something, just to get together and
yeah,
and
why
just,
not?
I mean, it's been a while, and I mean, yeah, we were a community. They're all our friends, and we were all there for each other. We all supported each other and helped each other with shows and whatever we had to do, right?
Yeah, I think that'd be a wonderful idea.
Okay, well, let me work on that. Let me work on that for next month or something. We'll get together and see everybody.
That would be a great idea because I didn't even make it to the Christmas party.
I didn't even know they had one. Well,
Oh, there you go. Well, I didn't make it to it. I knew the announcement. and my alarm went off for me to go, and I was just too tired, and I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know yeah, and that's like, yeah, but nonetheless, we'll do something, and God bless CHSR, and I thank you for being a stand-up great guy that you are, Chris, and keep doing what you're doing, keep rocking on.
Thank you, and you too, man. I mean, again, like there's more than what's listed on your YouTube channel, but I mean, 600 interviews is pretty damn impressive, and overall 700 plus interviews that you've done. I mean, again, all you had to do was do it, right?
Yep.
That's all you had to do, and look at the doors that's open for you. And I'm really happy. Like, I love to see that you're going to the conventions and getting out and meeting and making more connections, man. It's what the industry is about connections and friendship. And that's why I've always loved the entertainment industry, man. It's just because for the most part, people aren't trying to screw each other over. There
Or
are
at least so
people,
we
but
hope.
for the most part, everybody wants to try and help each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
awesome. Thank you for having me, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. You have my back, and you weren't the only one, but you have my back, and I always appreciated that, and I'll always appreciate you for it.
Awesome, man.
Until then, I hope that you get back on that crazy train.
Thanks, bro. I will be in touch, my friend.
Absolutely. Take care. God bless.
Okay, you too, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.